So today we have Coach Catherine Tolle. She is an experienced HR leader and an ICF credential coach, a professional certified coach, and faculty member at CDI-Africa Coaching Group. Catherine is passionate about empowering leaders to create great places to work where employees can grow, thrive, while realizing their full potential. She has a 20-year career spanning international not-for-profit sector where she held senior leadership positions in human resources. And she's a firm believer that learning never stops and constantly learning through, and she's constantly learning through books, webinars, and short courses, and delighted to learn from her today. So in her role at CDI Africa, she has trained and coached organization leaders across various sectors. Catherine is also a senior coach and trainer at Unlock, a Netherlands-based organization whose mission is transforming leaders through coaching and development. Her coaching philosophy goes as follows. As a coach, I believe that every individual possesses the potential for extraordinary growth and development. I'm committed to creating a safe and supportive space where clients can explore their aspirations, overcome challenges, and unlock their full potential. So Catherine also serves in a number of boards, including the General Assembly of Action Aid Kenya, the HROD, Committee of Action Aid International, and the Board of International Institute of Legislative Affairs. She's a member of the International Coaching Federation and the Institute of Human Resource Management. So please join me in welcoming Coach Catherine as she takes it up from here.
Thank you, Sharon. And good evening, everybody. It's really nice to see what's already coming through and to see the diversity we have with people joining us from various places all across Africa. So welcome to the conversation today as we discuss myths around office politics. So, and for many people, the phrase office politics, it brings up negative associations. People, like we've seen in the chat, favoritism, manipulation, power struggles. And so many leaders say, I'd rather just stay away from it than get involved in it. But in reality, so long as people are working together, there are going to be relationships, the need for influence, competing priorities, the need to form alliances. So some form of organizational politics naturally exists. So today's conversation is an opportunity for us to unpack some of the common myths that are around office politics and just be able to have a conversation around them, hear from our panel of experts, some of their thoughts around it, ask questions that we may have around it. And hopefully by the end of the session today, we'll have better clarity and even a better understanding of, so what really is office politics? Is it all bad? Or are there positive aspects of it? So to help us explore this conversation, we have two speakers who bring deep experience and insight into leadership, organizational dynamics, and influence. So if you allow me, I'll go ahead and just introduce our two speakers, then we can get into the conversation. So our two speakers is Mr. Kevin Ayugi and Mr. Patrick Obah. So Kevin Ayugi is a seasoned financial services executive and a digital transformation leader with over 15 years experience driving innovation, growth, and operational excellence across banking and microfinance in East Africa. He currently serves as the Chief Operating Officer and Country Manager at Izwe Kenya Holdings, where he leads operations, product innovation, and transformation of the business. He has also held various senior leadership roles across insurance and Tier 1 and 2 banks, shaping strategy and scaling digital and operational capabilities. Kevin is known for his execution-first mindset, consistently translating strategy into real measurable outcomes in complex high-growth environments. So outside of his core role, Kevin is an executive leadership coach, passionate about helping leaders unlock their potential, building clarity, strengthening decision-making, and translating ambition into disciplined execution. He's also a devoted family man and proud father of three, two girls and a boy, and considers being a present, engaged dad his greatest achievement. So join me in just welcoming Kevin into this conversation. Then allow me to also introduce our second panelist, Mr. Patrick Obah. Patrick Obah is a certified executive leadership coach and a leadership governance and sustainability advisor. Patrick works across all sectors, and his focus is to support leadership development in C-suite and board-level individuals and in organizations. He has over 15 years hands-on experience in corporate leadership and in boards. Prior to this, he worked in the oil and gas industry in a career that spanned over 35 years. He worked in senior leadership levels at Shell Oil in the UK and The Hague, and in natural gas in Malaysia. He subsequently worked as country chairman and CEO for Shell Kenya and Tanzania. So Patrick has wide experience in management at the international level and extensive experience in social, government, and developmental issues. He's a regular resource person on governance, leadership, and sustainability issues in both Kenya and across Africa. He's a highly respected member of the Kenyan and East African business community, and is a past chairman of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, KEPSA, and sits on boards of several business member organizations. He's the chairman of Africa Alliance, Kenya Asset Management, Bupa Global Insurance Limited, Java House Africa, TPZ Carsons East Africa, Trade Catalyst Africa, and is the vice chair of the International Chamber of Commerce. He's a non-executive director in companies involved in automotive learning, ICT, international development, manufacturing, and FMCG sectors. So join me as well in welcoming Patrick into this conversation. So as we then get to tap into the experience of our panelists and here, but as we start to do that, Kevin, and let me start with you. Before we even get into the many questions, we asked the people in the call, when they hear office politics, what comes to mind? So before we delve into this conversation about the myths of office politics, how would you define office politics? What is it?
So thank you, Catherine. Such a pleasure to be here. Like has been said in the chat, office politics is one of those questions that doesn't have a right or wrong answer. So I concur with everything that people said. I've experienced the same in my career. But for me, the best definition for office politics is how people compete, collaborate, influence decisions, or, as it were, build relationships at work. Think of it this way: an organization has a finite number of resources in terms of opportunities, recognition, resources, as well as leadership attention. Everybody's scampering for the same resources. If the playing field then feels even and fair, employees are likely to see the workplace as healthy and collaborative. You'll find people speaking up, building relationships, contributing to ideas, and feeling part and parcel of the company. On the flip side, when the field feels a bit uneven, decisions seem to be biased. Employees are spending their energy navigating personalities and power dynamics instead of focusing on the real work. So I saw somebody mention that politics is about playing games. Well, it is, but that's not the limit. For me, at its simplest, it's how people build influence, how you get noticed, and how you create opportunities for yourself within the workplace. That would be my best definition of office politics.
Wow. How you build influence, how you get noticed, and how you build relationships across the workplace. I like that. And, I like even the perspective you bring of, there are scarce resources that everybody is competing for. So in different environments, that may just play out differently. Patrick, you've been in this space for quite a while. So for you, what's office politics?
I think let's just look at the two words, office and politics, and take them apart. A lot of us, when we hear the word politics, it sort of takes us straight away to campaigns and whatever it is and so forth. And then that brings into mind a certain way of being. And so when you then add office in front of politics, people then take that word politics and stick it into the office, which it isn't. Or it could be, depending on what kind of environment sits in that office. And I think office, again, we put the word office, but office for me is a very wide word. It's almost anywhere. It's a place where people sit and relate and get together. So if you look at those as two words, an office is a place where people gather, get together, irrespective of whether it is a formal place of work or whatever it is, anywhere that people get together. And then politics, instead of being what we see and hear on top of of SUVs going around the country, but again, taking what Kevin has said about it, the key thing, and the one I want to add about, is about communication and the way the communication that you have can shape decisions and relationships, right? And that for me is one of the additions from what Kevin said. These way that we relate in terms of how we communicate, we can then start shaping decisions and outcomes in an organization. So in any organization or in any place where people gather, there are a lot of different interests that are there, different priorities, and sometimes limited resources. And when you've got that kind of situation, people are jostling to get the best they can out of that ecosystem. And that, in the broadest sense, is what office politics is. It's not about people backbiting each other and told. It's just around how you work together in an ecosystem to get the best for an organization. Now, that's a positive side of office politics. When it is constructive, it is used to build alignment, it is used to build trust and also create shared understanding of what needs to happen. And that is all around how you communicate with the people in the office, the influence that you have, the kind of relationships that you build, and all those come out as positive. However, it can be negative as well when those things are used in a way that is intended not to build within an organization, but to destroy. And office politics can be very, very destructive if that is what people want to achieve. And how do you do that? It's all around manipulation, hidden agenda, going behind people, doing all sorts of innuendos around the place, and that is negative outcomes out of office politics. Yeah, so that for me is what office politics is. It's wide. It's not just within your workplace, but it is anywhere where people congregate, and you can use it positively or negatively, as the case may be.
Thank you, Patrick. And you introduced it very well, that those are two different words, office and politics. And you're right, this word politics, we attach so much meaning to it, and therefore we could tend to interpret it in many ways. But allow me to just push this a bit further with you, Patrick. So like you've told us, it's not inherently toxic. It really is. People, they're jostling for resources, and there could be many factors that could influence how all of this plays out. So are there situations then when this politics, and let me put it in quotes, can then serve a constructive purpose within an organization? I'm calling it politics in quotes. Are there times when it really serves a very constructive purpose within an organization?
Yes, I think politics can serve, and that is my personal take on this. Politics can serve as a very, very positive thing in organizations. And I talk about the fact where you use relationships to build alignment across a whole series of stakeholders in an office. When you do that, you are bringing positive energy into a place. You are getting people to relate to each other in a way that sort of joins things together, and those joining of things together gets a much better whole than individuals working, right? And that is all around using a political framework to do so, right? And this is the positive political framework, communication, relationships, and so forth that you put together to create positive items in an office. So that's one aspect of talking about the positivity in that place. The other thing is when there are competing interests within an organization, if you're able to navigate them and make them complementary to each other as people work, that is another way of using so-called office politics to make things work very positively within an organization. And the last one I'd like to put together for that is sometimes people, you don't have consensus in an organization, and people have got different ideas. They're all pulling in different directions. And a good office politician will sit there and build consensus, listen to everybody, align the way they're thinking, bring them to this common space, and then start getting them to build on how each of the different perspectives they can bring into a conversation is going to make things better. Now, those are the positive elements, in my view, on office politics. And in my leadership journey, if I look at that, there's a lot of stuff that I came across. When you've got a job and things are tight, and you have to meet deadlines and you have to do all those things, you actually have to get people to work for you and work with you in order to achieve outcomes. And whilst we think about that as leadership has an element of politics in it. When you think of politics in its widest sense. And if you're able to sort of bring in all these elements that you have as a leader to bring positive change and get outcomes for an organization, that is playing office politics in a positive way. There are certain instances when you find that at work you haven't actually succeeded. And when you look at it within the same framework that I've laid out earlier, you find that maybe you didn't talk to stakeholders earlier, you didn't create that alignment early enough, you didn't do all these political things at the right time, and you find that when you're now coming to try and reach a decision and get things working, you haven't actually achieved it. And that is where your politics has not been efficient. It has not worked. It's not negative, but it's not efficient. And sometimes if you don't use the positive politics well, you don't get results in an organization.
Wow. Thank you, Patrick. You bring a very interesting perspective that I like, that when, people are all pulling in different directions, but you're able to sit and bring all of these people together and get them working towards a common outcome. That is politics. And a lot of times we may not even look at it that way, but as a leader, you've been able to influence all of those people. And that becomes, you get positive outcomes, you get people rallying together towards a common goal. And that, makes us, that myth of office politics is always toxic. That challenges it, because then from what you've said, actually, there are very many opportunities for it to be positive, for it to bring out very positive outcomes, for people to align together, for us to see good results, and even for resources to be allocated more efficiently. So,
and just something I'd like to add, Catherine, is one of the biggest things that kills positive office politics is ego. That small thing, stick it into a situation, and that can wreck a lot of good things that were going. So ego is when, as a leader, you're a bit afraid of losing control, and you try and now sort of use use the force to sort of try and bring things to happen together, and that begins to destroy things. And when ego comes through, people align to that ego one way or another. That creates another sort of tension, that creates division, and that is where you start getting divisive politics within an organization. So we, as individuals, sometimes are the cause of negative politics within an organization. I just thought I'd add that in. Thank you.
Wow, and that's really powerful, that ego. It's possible for organizational politics to play out and really play out for the good organization. But the minute ego begins to come in, that's it. You begin to now see divisive politics coming in across the organization. So let me move to you, Kevin. And maybe, a lot has been said, and the negativity, the manipulation that, people look at office politics with. But maybe the question is, where is the line? Because then yes, like Patrick has said, it can be used as a legitimate form of influence and relationship building. But where is this line, this invisible line where between healthy influence and unhealthy politics. Where is that line drawn?
Yeah, I think in Patrick's response, this was aptly covered, so I'll just piggyback on that. The line comes about based on your desired outcomes. You as a, let's say, head of sales want positive outcomes. The staff member wants positive outcomes by way of incentives or a promotion or whatever the case may be. You're all driving different agendas. I like the fact that you mentioned earlier putting politics in quotes because it doesn't always have a face. It may already be happening in an organization, even when nobody openly calls it out. So every time you're building your relationships, you're influencing decisions, etc., you're actually playing politics in one form or the other. In fact, most of the leaders we look up to or admire are very good at playing, healthy office politics. They, back to Patrick's point, communicate very clearly and concisely. They build trust. They support their team members. They create strong networks, and they sort of carry everybody along the journey. But they never call it office politics. But that ability to build credibility and influence, and sort of bring people together, that's where the thin line then comes through. I might be having only one position and everybody's scampering for it. But because I also want my targets met, I make it seem like everybody can actually qualify. But at the same time, I actually have somebody in mind who I want to fill the role. So when it's done with that intent to manipulate, it really creates a lot of friction. It creates the wrong organizational culture. And then for me, really, that's where the line is. You're in pursuit of limited opportunities, and the leadership, instead of using that opportunity to strengthen the team, use it as a divisive tool just to meet targets. So at the end of the day, you're manipulated into a position. Everything you come out of that situation with becomes a negative. So back to the point, when you hear politics, everything you will throw at it is really, really negative. Maybe that's how it's been that.
Right, and you bring out what a new word, intention.
Yes.
That the intention of it. That like when you say that a leader can be divisive in what they're driving. They've already made decisions behind the door, but you come and put it out there. There's no communication. It's not open. So you're intentionally driving this. So there's intention sometimes in driving it. And I'm curious. And maybe let me bring this curiosity to Patrick. There are people who say, me, I don't touch. I see no evil, I hear no evil, no office politics. I just come in, I sit at my desk, I work, no politics. And they just say, I just deliver work. In your experience you've worked across various places, you've led organization. Is this actually possible? And is it the best approach to navigating the dynamics of the workplace?
Yeah, you get people who, when people sort of sit down and they talk about, there's this happening in the office and so forth, and somebody else declares, I always avoid, I never get involved in office politics and stuff like that. When I hear that, I wonder whether that person is in the real world, because where the world does not cannot exist without a political angle at some point. So that person who always comes up and says, me, I'm never involved in politics, is not real. But again, you find there are people who are like that simply because they don't want to get involved in the reality of the ecosystem in which they're operating in. So you find that they're very introvert. They don't want to get involved with anybody. They work by themselves and so forth. And that, in a way, is avoiding quote office politics. Because if you're working in an ecosystem that has a lot of people in it, you have to relate to them. And that relationship you have with them is politics, in a way. Because you give and take, you have conversations, and people express themselves and so forth, and you generate outcomes as a result of that conversation. And as you're doing that, there are certain nuances that that come through in the conversation. You're listening, you're doing this, and so forth, and you shape part of that outcome. So there is no way that you can say you can completely avoid politics in the office if you're really working well in an organization. Sometimes people say that because on the surface, it may mean that I am a person of integrity, I'm a professional person, and I focus only on very special things. That may be what somebody is trying to put across by saying that I don't get involved in office politics, right? But that is never really accurate. Yeah. A lot of the times you must get involved. If you're working with people, you're doing all that, you're already within a political system in an organization. And I think the only issue here is about whether you are consciously engaging or subconsciously engaging. If you subconsciously engage, then you can say you avoid it. And it means that you're not with the flow of what is going on. If you consciously engage, it means you are with what is going on in that place. And you are able to actively contribute because you are consciously engaged. So those people, for me, who say that they're not involved in office politics have basically removed themselves from the reality of the office. And I think some people also in their own worlds, especially as you go up in an organization, you say you want to stay out of things because sometimes you want to avoid difficult conversations. And you call them politics. It's a nice way of sort of, of framing it so that people see that is a bad thing to do. So you call it office politics because people normally see it as a negative thing. But it's actually a positive thing if you go in. So people say they avoid difficult conversations. And sometimes people stay out of it hoping that what I have done will speak for itself. And a lot of times, if you don't promote, if you don't engage people, you don't tell them what you're doing and so forth, and you just want that to speak for itself, you're avoiding office politics in a way. Because getting things seen, getting things understood, and getting the right allocation in terms of, yes, so-and-so did this, so-and-so did that, and so forth, is only possible if you get that communication in an office. So for me, this whole thing about, I'm not in politics in an office, it can't work. Because if you feel comfortable being out of it, it'll come at a cost to you as an individual in the office. You will probably not get your promotion at a certain point because you're faffing around on the edges of things and you're not being positive in the place. And it will come at a cost to you, either in terms of relationships, in terms of work, and so forth. And sometimes if you stay out of that, what are the framing things that you can see? There's no visibility. You're not seen. Yeah, you are not understood. People may not even recognize what you're doing because you're keeping out of the conversation, out of this quote politics. So that means that people can't attribute anything to you because you are not visible. And again, what I said is, it's the same thing, but also if your input is not felt, decisions can be made without your influence. And that means you're left out of places. What happens to you as an individual when you don't get engaged? You get forgotten out of the situation. So again, when promotions come, etc., you will be forgotten because you have not shown your influence in a place of work. And if you are involved in that positive way, not in a negative way, your promotions, your whatever it is, accolades will come through. But if you do the opposite, you expect the opposite result as well. So I personally, if you avoid office politics, it's at your own peril in terms of getting results, getting promotions, and getting outcomes that you desire for yourself and for the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Wow, that is such a broad perspective. And it's interesting because a few weeks ago, I was reading a certain book, and the author, who is a Kenyan author, says this, he says, I sat in the corner, did my work, hoped my work would speak for itself. And I noticed I'm being passed up for promotions. Nobody is noticing my contribution. So you bring it out very well that actually you get passed up. It has a cost. You could sit in your corner, but there's a cost you're going to pay for it. But there's a gentleman on the chat by the name of Steve who has said something very interesting, that to disengage from office politics is politics in itself.
Yes.
So I really like that. It actually is politics in itself. You think you're sitting in your little corner. I see no evil, I hear no evil, but that's politics in itself. So thank you for that perspective, Patrick. So
Thank you.
allow me to shift this a little bit to you. I mean, the workplace has changed. We have multi-generational workforce. We have the Gen Xers. I think the baby movers are getting out now. We have the Gen Xers, we have the Gen Ys, millennials, we have the Gen Zs. I mean, it's a very dynamic workplace. And the dynamism of it in this multi-generational, I mean, it's quite interesting because the Gen Zs are a completely, their way of thinking and their way of doing is very different from us. How do you see office politics then playing out in this changing landscape?
Yeah, it's interesting. So as an example, my father spent 40 odd years working for the government, and in their world, it was about command and control. So you got an order, you executed it, no questions asked. Then you have today's era. So in the past, politics was driven by physical presence. There was a very clearly defined hierarchy, closed door meetings, huge boardrooms, and effort was scored on who spent the most time in the office, who leaves at 9, 10, etc. Today, with the multi-generation working together, you have the rise of hybrid, you have fully remote. So influence is being shaped completely different. And what is important to one generation is not necessarily important to the next. Gen Xers, as you mentioned, value structure. They value relationships, and depth is built over time. You have your millennials who prefer collaboration, visibility, face to face, cross-functional influence, etc. Then you have your Gen Zs who've now come up or coined the new word that's going around in the office, toxic office culture. So that's still politics. So they value authenticity, they value transparency, they want to be included in all decisions. They don't believe in hierarchy, they want access to leadership. I meet my CEO in the corridor, I want to say hi and want to tell them all my problems. So the differences can create friction because these are different generations, but they can also create strong organizations if well managed. So remote and hybrid work, as an example, has just changed the rules of visibility. In the past, simply being present could get you a promotion. It creates influence. You have a title manager, gives you credibility. Today, influence is about information. It's about responsiveness. It's back to Patrick's point, your communication style. So this has largely changed over time. It'll continue to change. One major shift, perhaps in the younger generation, is that they're less tolerant of politics. So these guys will quit on you in a week if the culture in the workplace is too toxic. They don't like secrets. Remember, in the past, information was concentrated around the executive management, directors, etc. Right now, they want the data. They don't want the secrets. They want fairness. They want openness, merit, etc. So the organization that then thrives in this environment is not one that will eliminate office politics. Like Patrick said, this thing is everywhere. If you're not playing it, then you're playing yourself. But those that can create some sort of transparency around the cultures that they're building, and influence is earned through how you show value, how you get your colleagues to start trusting and working with you, and how you're contributing rather than being afraid of certain gatekeepers. So these are some of the nuances that we sort of have to keep in step with, and start playing inclusion politics or information politics or something of that sort. So that's where I see us being able to navigate this multi-generational workforce.
Inclusion politics, information politics. But I'm curious, Kevin, is it possible that even the different generations, we see it differently? So we, the Gen Xers, hunker down, work, just sit, be quiet. Your boss says you do. The Gen Z is thinking, why am I doing it? And I want to walk into every office. Is it possible that even our perception of office politics across these generations is very different?
You're right, Catherine, it is. Remember, before, if I was called a CEO or a COO, that automatically gets me credibility. Right now, building influence is not related to your title. Your title, they don't care. You call them what you want to call them, as long as you're paying them enough, giving them flexible work hours. So they have their way of playing politics. But remember, call myself an X. If a Gen Z shows up to work at 10, that's their normal work hours. But because the way I've been trained, you show up at work at 8 and you leave at 5. So those also often bring the politics and the clashes. So if you're not playing inclusive politics, then you're going to lose 30-40% of your workforce.
Then we hear that the term you said, the toxic office, it becomes a term that then is constantly going round.
Yes.
So Patrick, I'm just curious. So you've told us about, with this, this thing is here. There's no way you can sit in your corner and say, I don't know, I don't see, I just do what I need to do. So as a leader and as people working in organizations, we need to figure out how to navigate this office politics. So maybe I'd ask, from your own experience, what skills have enabled you navigate office politics in the places you have been, in how you show up, how you influence others, how you navigate power dynamics? You could share with us, how have you managed to do that?
I think for me, the issue about navigating office politics is first about the fact that people need to see the real you. So they're not building a kind of a persona around you that can then fuel the narrative that follows everything you say. So for me, that was the first thing that has helped me navigate office politics. It's just being authentic as a person. And that cuts out a lot of the opportunities for people to start bringing innuendos, all sorts of things and when they do bring anything, anybody tries to bring anything else, people know the real you. And they can tell people, forget it, that is not true. So that protects you as a person from being attacked within there. But also, as it sort of prevents a negative, it also builds a positive. Because when people can trust what you say and they believe that you're not sort of giving them something to hang themselves with, etc., etc., the conversations that you have with people are very, very different. And you find that when you start talking about building, building bridges between different people, that can only happen when you're an authentic person and people feel free and they believe you're not trying to sort of play one person against the other. It's not what you say, it is what you are that creates that confidence in a situation around sort of the office politics item. So it is around your person. And you need to be aware of when you do certain things, what impact do they have within the ecosystem you're in? And if you've got this, if you've got this thing that you always got your radar out, you can understand, you watch when you say something, what happens? Yeah. And you're able to see some of the things that you shouldn't touch because it's having a negative impact on that. All this being aware around what is going on around you is very key. There is something that I picked up. I am a member of the Rotary. And there is a very simple thing that we always use. It's called the 4-way test. it's a really powerful thing that it says, or the things you think, say, or do, right? And things you think, say, or do. So that is think is when you're framing it, and then when you communicate, and when you take the action. Those are the three things. There are four things you have to ask yourself. First of all, is it the truth? Secondly, is it fair to all concerned? And the third one is will it build goodwill and better friendships? Right? And then will it be beneficial to all? Now, if you in an instant you just look at that, it actually frames you differently to the people you're talking to at any given time. So little things that you get that are able to sort of help you be aware, be authentic, and listen, and don't what do you call it? Don't read behind the lines. Sometimes somebody speaks to you in English, but you frame it in Shenglish or something like that. Yeah, and that creates, that is actually really, really you have to be very careful, because that can put you into some very, very, very awkward situations on that. So I think that is the first one. I think the second thing for me is getting to know people, just building relationships. And if you got the authentic first and then the relationships that you build, all these things begin to reinforce, reinforce the walls around you, such that office politics, you can play the positive bit rather than the negative bit. So I think those are a couple of the things that help you really do a lot of things. And people will trust, they'll come to you, and you are able to then be able to make things work and able to make people work as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Authenticity, it's not what you say, it's who you are. That's part of what then enables you navigate this space. The things you think, the things you say, and the things you do, that awareness, and also building relationships. You can't work alone, much as you want to. So how do you build these relationships, and how then do they enable you to navigate around the office? Kevin, for you, what skills have enabled you to be able to navigate this space?
I think Patrick has aptly covered quite a number. So I'll pick one, something I picked from the younger generation. I work with a lot of them, and they have very interesting sayings. I always pay attention in case I get lost. So one of the things they say is that something must kill a man. I don't think they mean this. They say that something must kill a man.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they mean it in the literal sense. But in many ways, what they mean is that life will always come with pressure. It'll come with criticism. It'll come with politics that we're discussing today. It'll come with risk and a lot of uncertainty, especially with the layoffs that are happening, the downgrades. Everybody's getting fired every now and then. And this will only intensify the competition for the scarce resources. So either one, the politics will be overshadowing the work that needs to be done, or vice versa. But what I say is you cannot spend your entire career trying to avoid discomfort or trying to please everybody. You cannot be all things to everybody. So you have to decide what it is you stand for. So what I've learned is, especially around office politics, is that that mindset helps you translate how you understand people, how you show up authentically. Back to Patrick's point. Alliances will always be there. Opinions will be there. Agendas, perceptions, you name it. They'll all be there. So if you spend all your energy reacting to every rumor, every side conversation, or today I got a new boss, so power dynamics shifted, you tend to lose yourself. So to survive all the noise, stand for something. Be that person who stands for competence. Be that person who stands for integrity. Be that person who stands for consistency, fairness, or just a person who has, the right outputs or outcomes. Once you get around that, you start realizing that one, either people will understand you better. Your reputation becomes more stable because it's grounded, and it's not grounded on politics. And then you sort of don't lose yourself. Yeah, you have your values, you have your credibility, and you maintain your identity. Yeah. So, like our national politics, governments come, presidents go. So, guys are going to forget this politics because it's just momentary. It's just there for the moment. But most guys will rarely forget consistency that you stood for, either in building them, in supporting them, or whatever the case may be. So again, back to that point for authenticity, I just thought I'd unpack it in a different way.
Wow, stand for something.
Yeah.
You know, integrity, competency, consistency, stand for something, and that will help you in navigating this space. But let me switch back to Patrick for just a minute. Patrick, you sit in a lot of boards. You held CEO positions, chairman of several boards, sit in many boards. And there could be, you know, people here who are wondering, do these things play out the same at that level? And sometimes you'll hear stories on the highways and byways of people talking about, oh, boards are this. I mean, so how does this play out? Is there the people who are aspiring and growing to that level, you know, into senior leadership, into CEO positions, into sitting in various boards, how even at that level do they also navigate that politics? Then they're not employees, but they still need to manage and navigate the politics of those levels. How does that play out, Patrick?
I think at the principles we're discussing, we've been discussing at this time, for me, they're universal, they're evergreen. The only thing is that the way you frame them at the different levels in an organization changes. And the reaction, the response has got to be a lot sharper the higher up you go. So it is starting to hone your skills. When you're doing group work, you're working as a team within a department and everything else, you start from there. When you become the leader, the head of department or whatever it is like that, you're operating at a different level. You don't have to be doing it on a day-to-day basis. You're going a little bit more strategic. You then become to the C-suite -1, it changes, and you get to the C-suite, right? This whole thing is not about everyday conversations. It's about relationship building. A lot of that time, by the time you get to the C-suite, it's all around how you deal with people, how you communicate, how you work with them, and how well you're tuned into their own minds, into the way they're saying things, understanding them, understanding the sort of the little, signals that they have, the movement of a finger, the twitching of an eye, and stuff like that. So you begin to look for different signals at different levels. When you get to the board, right, and this now becomes a different thing, you're bringing a group of people who are not homogeneous. They have not been brought there to work together to build a company, right? And they have not been trained all to do the same thing. Each of them brings a different perspective into this thing you're trying to sort of call the strategy of a company and so forth. And at that level, this whole thing about office politics takes a different flavor, because now it's about listening, digesting, and seeking clarification. A lot of people, when they go to boards, they want to look expert. And you sit in the corner and you think, if I ask something, are these guys going to think I'm stupid because I'm supposed to know everything at the top? It isn't. It's all around clarification so that you can contribute better from your expertise and your knowledge, because each of you has been brought into a board because of you're bringing something to the table that, when put together, will do something for that organization. The chairman has to manage the politics in a board. They have to be able to stroke all these people, like it's like a conductor for an orchestra. Yeah, you've got to understand everybody's instrument that they're playing. You've got to have that ear to listen to whether somebody's off tune, what have you, and everything else, and be able to make that happen. And each of the people there has got to understand that they are actually working to make this music, sound beautiful. So working at the board level is almost you bring your instrument into the orchestra. It's not about having the same instrument and calling it an orchestra. It won't work that way. So when you sit on a board, it's listening, digesting, playing back, and then using what you've learned out of that playback to then give your contribution into creating something that everybody will say, yeah, we've actually been able to put a strategy together, or we are doing something for this organization that will move it forward. So, as I say, the principles are the same. It's only that as you go higher up, the emphasis is slightly different from that point of view.
I like that. It's the way you frame them at the various levels in the organization. The higher up you go, there's shifts that then you need to tweak. I mean, the principles remain the same. It's just how then you sharpen it and how then it shows up at those different levels. Wow. Thank you, Patrick. I mean, very, very, very insightful. And as you were speaking, one of the things that I was thinking is, the coaching skills, listening, asking questions, seeking clarification, not having to know everything, that being comfortable in not knowing, that was what was going through my mind, that, wow, the coaching skills come out, very, very strongly in that. So thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Patrick. And before we come, I mean, we still want to come to see what questions people are asking, to be able to respond to the questions that are coming through and address the questions that could be coming through. But before we do that, I'd like us to just take a short commercial break, if I may call it that, and invite Sharon for 5 minutes. Then we'll come back. So any questions, please put your questions in the chat as we're doing this commercial break where Sharon has something she'd like to share with us. Let's put our questions. Patrick and Kevin are happy to respond to any questions that may come up from what we're discussing. Sharon, over to you.
Thank you, Coach Catherine. Oh, I've been taking notes, and the past 30, 40 minutes have truly been very enriching. And so I'll shift gears to something slightly different before we come back to the question and answer session. So in the meantime, please keep the questions coming through on the chat. Go ahead and type them. But for now, I'd like to mention something that I believe would be of interest for the people on the call. Everyone speaking here today, myself included, Coach Catherine, Patrick, and Kevin, have something in common. They're all associated with CDI-Africa Coaching Group, and we are the ones bringing this webinar to you. And we have something in common, that we are a coaching development leadership development institute and coaching training organization at the same time. So allow me to please share a little bit more about what we do and a program that may be of interest to you, and then we'll get back to the question and answer session. So I'm going to project my screen, share my screen shortly. Okay. So this is who we are. We are a leadership and coaching development organization and headquartered right here in Nairobi, Kenya since 2006, accredited by the International Coaching Federation. And we have a global outlook, but African-centered and inspired in what we do. Our mission is we exist to transform leaders and inspire sustainable high-performance cultures. So we do have two priority lines of service. First of is the coach training and development, which all the coaches you've seen today are part of. So we have the global diplomas, starting off with the diplomas, professional coaching, executive coaching diploma, and executive leadership coaching, and advanced mastery programs as well for those who are already certified coaches. We equally do coaching in organizations, where we embed coaching within organization through the leadership masterclass, one-on-one leadership coaching, and team coaching. This is just amongst the few reasons that many clients partner with us. We are internationally accredited, highest professional standards, professional track record, 19 years now, learning and implementation support, experiential learning. We have a tested methodology, cultural and contextual fit, as we've mentioned earlier, that we make it to the African, knit it together for the African market, one-stop center-based value, and great partnership opportunities as well. So here is just a glimpse of our impact and reach so far. We have 125 over 125 cohorts, 1,400 and more certified coaches, and those who have been executive coaches over 800 of them. So we have a presence in over 30 countries, and we pride ourselves to be home of the first master certified coach. So far we're talking of 26 cohorts since 2015. This is the cohorts for the global diploma professional coaching, which is the key focus today, with over 300 number of coaches trained, representing over 13 countries and a wide array of areas of specialization as well. So here are our accreditation, ICF, NITA, ACTO, HR, Human Resource Institute, and we are both level 1 and 2 institution. Just a glimpse of the organizations we've worked with as well. Strathmore University, Britam, Obama Foundation, Site on Investments, British Council, Safaricom, Juhudi Kenya, Tan Tansed, Standard Chartered Cooperative Bank, Centum, amongst many others that will not really be able to capture at this point. And so in a minute or two, then I'll delve down to the Global Diploma Professional Coaching, where I'll share a little bit more about this, which is the objective of the program is to develop world-class professional coaching experts to meet the ever-increasing demand of coaching in the professional coaching in the global marketplace. So secondly, is to also impact professional coaching skills that help the graduates position themselves to serve broad niche markets that are of interest to them. They're truly wide and growing very fast. So here are the factors that can make you really suitable for the program. If you are motivated by a genuine interest and desire to support others, make transformative shifts in their personal and professional space, then this is for you. Or if you have a personal DNA that says a natural tendency to attract people and build trusting relationships, then this is for you. And at the end of it all, with a commonly called CPC, certified professional, as a certified professional coach, then this program unlocks your ability to become either an internal or an external coach, to choose and work with specific niche markets where you can make the greatest impact as you desire, serve specific clients that give you maximum joy and fulfillment, truly key, and change the niche market even as you please whenever need arises, and advance in your specialization at your own pace. And so if all that I've mentioned regarding this program has really sparked your interest, then I invite you to scan this QR code on the screen right now. I'll leave it here for a few seconds, say 10, 20 seconds, and then we'll proceed to the Q&A. So if this has sparked your interest and coaching has been on your mind for a while, or today, following this conversation and the great intelligence and brilliance that the speakers have shown today and their ability to navigate these really complex matters in the corporate world, in the boardroom, in the many spheres that we find ourselves in our careers, then this would be of great help to you. So kindly go ahead and scan the QR code on the screen and fill out the interest form, and one of our team members will be keen to reach out to you and offer you guidance and help going forward. And the 20 seconds are up. So we will proceed to the question and answer session. But not to worry, if you've not been able to scan the QR code, my colleagues will put the link on the chat. So my colleagues, kindly go ahead and share the link on the chat, even as we look out for the Q&A. I will go ahead and stop sharing so that we can proceed for the Q&A session. Back to you, Coach Catherine.
Thank you, Sharon. So I'm going through the questions, the chat, to just look at the questions. So I see a question by Joram Oganjo that says, how can you use office politics positively? I think that has been explored at length in terms of how then office politics can be used positively. There's a question from Stephen Moodley that says, there seems to be a thin line between positive and negative office politics. What are the safeguards, knowing that this is an informal channel, especially at high leadership levels? I believe it has been touched on, but I'll just throw it to the panelists. Any one of you could take it.
I can mention something. For me, it would be down to intent. We've talked quite at length about office politics. We know negative office politics is detrimental to the organization. So, what is your intent in driving your political agenda? Is it self-motivated in that you want a promotion? Is it for furthering your team's ability to deliver, etc.? So, what's the intent? And then secondly, perhaps is what level of influence do you actually have to drive change? Because then you might think, remember we mentioned that politics doesn't really have a label. So you might think that you have very little influence, but when you do something, all of a sudden you turn the organization on its head. So it's down for me to intent and then perhaps influence and what agenda you're driving.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. And this, I'll throw this to you, Patrick. There's a question from Collins. What would be the best balance in a situation where you're caught up into a superiority complex at the workplace?
What complex?
Not complex, superiority context.
Oh, superiority context.
Yes, at the workplace.
Yeah, I think
what would be the best balance?
Superiority is, when that happens, it always shows a situation where somebody lacks confidence, they lack confidence, basically, and all the rest of it. So they bring out this superiority thing, they're trying to make themselves rise above everything else, above people and whatever it is to place them up there. Unfortunately, whenever you try that, people will see through it very easily. People see through it very easily. And when you see that, to help the person, first of all, don't tackle that superiority complex. Basically, show that the whole organization where you sit and everything else are quite conversant with whatever it is that is being used to show that superiority complex. And people, there is no particular way they can show it. People will use something that they're comfortable with, that they believe puts them above everybody else. And it's just diluting that in terms of how you work with them, how you sort of talk to them, and so forth, so that crutch they're using to sort of create superiority all of a sudden loses its ability to be a crutch, and realize that that thing is actually present everywhere anyway. So I would never attack a superiority complex by trying to bring somebody down. It's by bringing their clutch down. And that then they can come down to a level without losing their dignity at that point in time. And effectively, I think if you can do it that way, that complex will disappear, because they will realize that at the end of the day, they're trying to use a clutch that people can see through, and in a way, they've been brought down without being dishonored as an individual. So the superiority complex is there are people who play it, but again, we should never ever attack it. All we should do is to gently remove it away from that person and bring them back to earth where we are.
Wow. Thank you, Patrick. The thing that comes to mind when you say, from your responses, there's no one size fits all. No. So it is applying wisdom, applying your emotional intelligence, and just being able to be, like you said earlier, authentic. And in doing that, you're able to navigate. So there's no one answer that is, this is the answer, this is the way you deal with it. Because every context is different, and different things show up. So I like that. There's no one size fits all. You figure it out. How do I apply my own wisdom and emotional intelligence in these situations to be able to navigate it? Thank you for sharing that. Collins, I see your comment. I have come to learn about power of silence. You don't have to speak every time about everything. Absolutely. And there's a question here from Teresia Njoroge. It says, I'll put this to you, Kevin. How do you get in sync with office politics when you're new in the office and you're in a leadership position where everyone seems to have a better understanding of the organization than you?
Yeah, very interesting question. I'll borrow a leaf again from the younger generation. For them, there's a new word again coined, authentic. Be authentic. This does not necessarily mean that you say everything that's in your mind without filters. As part of leadership, you have to have a fairly good amount of EQ. But for me, this is working on building your credibility before you're trying to build your influence. Remember, you're new. You don't want to take very many steps very fast. The mistake most leaders make is I have gotten to the position I've gotten to. So you assume that your title will equal some sort of influence. But reality check is that competence still matters. So try as much as possible to show rather than to say. So deliver consistently, keep your word, become known for solving problems rather than creating noise. In turn, the new guys, your team members, etc., will start emulating and granting you that much needed influence. So that would be my 2 cents for the new leader.
Building your credibility before you build your influence. That the influence doesn't just come. You need to build something before the influence comes. So that ability to build your credibility. Wow. Thank you, Kevin. There's a question here, and part of this you've answered, Patrick, but there's also a new twist to it, and I'll just put it to you. So somebody says, how do you navigate with leaders who play divide and conquer politics in a bid to show they are super leaders? I think you answered that, and you could add anything to it that you may want to add. But as you answer that, then you could also respond to the question about then how do you also deal with founders? You're muted, Patrick.
You're talking about founders of organizations.
Yes.
That's great. I've actually I was at some point asked to go and do a kind of some training of a board where it was a founder plus the children and a few other outside people. There was a family founder with their sort of the next generation plus a few people who have been brought in for independence in that particular place.
Yeah.
And I'll answer this first, then I go. I think this is more interesting because it's quite a paradox a lot of people have to try and answer. I think the founder has got to be put on a pedestal. That's the first thing, and keep them there because that is the founder has really done a lot of groundwork. They put things, they built that thing, and they would normally want to be recognized as a founder. And as you recognize the founder, you also say that part of the foundation that they have built is the strengths that sit in that room. And they've got to nurture those people and then allow them to fly. Because if they can't fly and see what there is out there and bring it back so that the founder can give the wisdom to then move forward, the founder will probably be left where they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it's a conversation that has to be had in such a way. And normally, I mean, when I had this conversation with this group of the founder plus the second generation, third generation, plus these independent people, framing it to them that, in fact, letting people go out, find out things, bring it up, have a good cocktail conversation where, within the board and so forth, and then ask them for their wisdom in terms of the way forward, is simply just, it is stroking the founder, but letting the board and the other people work together and move the things forward. And always asking for their wisdom. That is really the underlying thing. Because you bring a situation, you've got a solution, and ask them, what do you think? How would you do this? Whatever it is. And you can have a conversation that way because you've asked them for an opinion, and that opinion then creates a conversation. The only problem that happens there is if they then decide that now that you've all talked, this is the way it's going to happen. Then, which is sometimes what you see going on in those kind of situations. And then the independent people are the ones who then come in because they are independent and they can push the agenda without necessarily stroking the founder in a different way. So yeah, one has to be intentional in how they structure the team around the founder so that they're each able to contribute in keeping the founder as a founder, but moving the organization forward and bringing the founder along on that one. So that was that particular engagement that I had with this company that had 3 generations in the board. And it turned out very, very interesting at that point in time.
Thanks, Patrick. And the
I think the other
person
one I
has
had
added a
answered.
tweak to it. Sorry, the person has added a tweak to it and said,
Yeah.
no, the founders here could be in reference with employees who've been with that organization since it started. So they've been there. So founders could also be that group of people. So I don't know whether that changes, anything.
The group of employees who have been there from the beginning. I mean, that they form a clique within the organization. And if you find that you've got the founder plus these employees who have been there forever, who own the copyright, so to speak, of the organization, it is always good to recognize a copyright, but again, gently introduce the fact that the world is moving forward. And I think even in the current, even without talking about the founders, even right now in a lot of corporate boards and everything else, when you start bringing in, all this, all the AI stuff and all the, all the digital stuff, and you're talking about social media and all the rest of it into a board meeting, there are people who resist it completely because that is not their comfort zone. And you've just got to make sure that you bring in the right people who can shake that around. There is a board where I sat on, in fact, and because of what I'm saying about this, the Gen Zs and everything else, I happened with the chairman, and I said we need to have somebody who is under 40, female, and it doesn't matter. And we found somebody who had never been in a board before. And they brought in all the good stuff around social media, what have you, and all the, the conversations that were being had at that kind of level. And they're able to come in, and I had to warn the rest of the board, this person is going to disrupt the way we normally have our board meetings. Because they've never been in a board, but they add value. And it was interesting for the first 3 months to see the chemistry that happened until everybody got comfortable with each other. So the founders and the founders men and women will have to be disrupted slowly until they see that whatever the disruption is bringing is positive for the organization.
Well, thank you, Patrick. I'm hearing a lot of in what you're saying, a lot of just us being able to apply wisdom, have a mind shift. So as we then come towards closing this and as we come down to land it, what advice would you then give leaders who are seeking to then navigate office politics? Because we've seen it's a lot broader than the way we see it. It's not negative and manipulative. There's a lot of influence and relation building and positive that can come out of it. So what advice would you give a leader who's seeking to navigate the office politics with greater confidence, greater authenticity, and greater impact? Let me start with you, Patrick. What advice would you give such a leader?
Give Kevin a chance to be first.
Kevin.
I saw that
I've been
coming.
first so many times that I take all the thunder out. So Kevin.
No problem. The advice I'd give is perhaps to know how to separate perception from intention. A lot of times it's a communication breakdown issue. So if we take to interpreting every action purely at face value, we then start to easily personalize things, and these things might be driven by pressure. To the earlier point around founders, it could be your survival instinct or the founder's vision, a long-term vision. So if we can get to that sweet spot where what the intention of whoever is giving you a directive or whatever thoughts you have then towards a certain colleague, that tends to clear issues out quite a bit. So it then becomes less about who has proximity to power, who knows how to play the game best. It actually becomes very factual. And then you'll notice that even for the gentleman who asked about just being by the corner somewhere, office politics will always expose something. So pressure will expose your character, success will expose what Patrick was talking about, your ego, power will expose your intention. So there's always something that will come out. So back to outcomes again. So if we can navigate around that, that would be my best piece of advice. That helps you logically look at every situation as it comes and not having inbuilt perceptions. So politics will come and go, noise will eventually fade, but how you then navigate it, people are likely going to remember how you treated them through it all. So that would be my parting shot.
Thank you, Kevin. The intention, and people will remember how you treated them through it all. Thank you for that. So Patrick, before you give us the advice, there's a question here which somebody says, they said this we may not have answered. How do you navigate with leaders who play divide and conquer politics in a bid to show they are super leaders? I think that there's a question around that. You could speak into it as you then give us your parting shot.
Yeah, I think the divide and conquer is to always recognize that people are trying to divide. And the minute you recognize that is then to bring people together. And that is start playing the team, become the team member, whatever it is, and so forth. Whilst somebody may just try to isolate you out of the conversation and say, you be here because that is what you do, and so you be here and everything else, so that it's only one person who knows everything that is going on. And therefore they have the power because they're the ones who are manipulating everybody around that place. If you know that you're all there, you don't have to have those conversations in the presence of the leader or whoever is trying to divide and conquer. Just have the conversations and recognize that that is what they're trying to do. And when they're trying to divide and everything else, but they see that things are happening in harmony, then effectively they will realize they've been had in terms of what they're trying to do. So when if you're being put into a corner and not being allowed to sort of work with everybody else, that is a very, very strong signal of a divide and conquer person. And it is good to have those conversations when you're having a cup of coffee at the coffee machine or in the kitchen. When you're in a bus going on or in a van going on a trip, the person who's sitting next to you can have conversations and so forth. It's always good to be able to sort of just come together, realize it. Don't call it that, but just realize that somebody's trying to take you apart, come together again. So that would be my little bit about divide and conquer. And in terms of what I like to sort of say for the end, I think avoiding office politics doesn't make you a principled person. That for me is the first thing. It makes you often less impactful as a person. When good leaders, as a leader, you step back and let other people, let the politics play itself, somebody else will step in. And that space will be taken and you lose out completely because you've left. So you don't become a better leader by avoiding office politics. You become better as a leader by transforming how influence works around you. So you take the office politics and make it work. And that makes you a much, much better leader.
Wow. Thank you. Avoiding office politics doesn't make you a principled person. So it's taking it and making it work. So I like that. And what I'm hearing from both of you is that it's the office, it's there, it will always be there, the noise will be there, but it's less about playing office politics, but more about understanding influence, relationships, and how decisions happen within the organizations, and then being able to figure out how do I play within that space. That's what I'm hearing. So a mind shift for us where you hear the word office politics and you're running in an opposite direction, beginning to think about, how can I navigate this? How can I understand influence? How can I influence in this space? How can I build relationships? How can I begin to change and shift some of the things that could be happening? So a whole mind shift for us in terms of just how we see office politics and how it plays out. Because then at the end of the day, if we sit in our little corners, then you end up being the loser in very many ways. So thank you very much. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Patrick. It's been a very rich discussion, very informative, a lot of insights that I think we've picked, and I can see some of the things that people are already writing in the chat in terms of what they've gotten. You know, somebody says this discussion is very informative, and I now know how to handle both positive and negative office politics, because for sure, we're going to find both. So I've seen a few. I like what Selama Wheat says, come up with your own instrument. You know, when Patrick talked about the orchestra, and in the orchestra, everybody comes with an instrument. So come, you know, bring your own instrument. So Shiko says this is a very insightful discussion. So it's actually 1 minute to 7 o'clock, and we'd like to stop right on time. So allow me to say a big thank you to Kevin, to Patrick for taking the time to unpack this topic for us, and even just bringing in a very great wealth of experience and, you know, things for us to consider and reflect and shift the way we look at certain things, really for our own benefit. So thank you for that. We truly appreciate. Thank you, Sharon, for your support, and CDI for hosting this very informative session. So Sharon, allow me to hand back to you. You could close for us with any final remark or word of prayer.
Thank you so much. This has truly been very, very informative. And even sitting on this side, I have learned a lot, and there's so much more that I'll be working with. So, as we finalize, then I will bring a call that I mentioned earlier, and with a link that I've shared on the chat for anyone who would be interested in joining the bandwagon of these certified coaches that have talked to us today, who, in addition to their great experience, they have garnered so much richness and depth from being certified coaches. Then I invite you to fill in an interest form where one of my colleagues will be